You know the name Ted Bundy, right? Handsome, charismatic, studying law.
Yeah, the kind of person you'd never suspect.
Exactly. Except he was this brutal serial killer. We know he killed at least 30 people. Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Florida.
And that's just the confirmed count, the real number. Probably much higher. We'll likely never know for sure.
It's chilling. What's really gets me, I guess, is that contrast. His public face versus the monster underneath.
Absolutely. That ability to wear a mask, this facade of normalcy, it's so central to his story.
Right. And that's what we're diving into today. We want to go beyond the easy headlines.
We're looking at his life, his crimes, how he was caught, trying to understand the psychology, maybe.
Yes, and the investigation where things went wrong at first. But most importantly, really, we need to remember the victims.
Their lives were cut short. We've got a pretty detailed account to work from here.
So, for you listening, think about this. How did he do it? How did he manipulate people so effectively? Evade police for so long?
It's a complex question. We have to look at him, sure. But also the society at the time, the way investigations worked or didn't work.
So that's the plan for this deep dive. We'll explore the manipulation, how law enforcement finally cracked the case, and always, always keep the focus on the victims.
It's heavy stuff, obviously. We're aiming for an analytical approach, but also one that remembers the human cost.
Bundy's case, it really makes you question things, doesn't it? How we perceive people, how evil can hide in plain sight.
It does, especially when it's wrapped up in charm.
Let's start at the beginning then. Theodore Robert Cowell, born in Burlington, Vermont, November 1946.
And right from the start, there's this layer of deception about his parents.
Yeah, he was initially raised by his grandparents, who he thought were his parents.
His mother, Eleanor, was presented as his older sister because of the stigma, around having a child outside of marriage back then.
Imagine finding that out later, the potential impact. Psychologists talk about shame, inadequacy, maybe resentment.
It certainly could have contributed. That kind of foundational lie. It can mess with your sense of self, your trust in others.
Then they moved to Tacoma, Washington. His mom married Johnny Culpepper Bundy, hence the name, but Ted apparently never really bonded with him.
Though potential instability early on, that deception about his birth, it might have laid some groundwork maybe for later issues. Hard to say definitively, but it's there.
But outwardly, he built this image of, well, success.
Right. Shy as a kid, people said, but smart. Went to the University of Washington.
Majored in psychology, which is deeply ironic, isn't it?
It really is. Makes you wonder why. To understand himself, or maybe to understand how to manipulate others better.
He was articulate, had political ambitions too, worked on Republican campaigns, even for Governor Daniel Evans.
Yeah, he was actively trying to project this image. Ambitious, respectable.
And his relationships. There was one woman known as Stephanie Brooks, whose rejection is often pointed to.
A possible trigger, yeah. Speculation is his rage targeted women who resembled her later on.
And get this, he volunteered at a suicide crisis hotline.
While harboring these incredibly dark, violent urges.
The disconnect is just staggering.
Offering help to people in crisis while planning horrific violence. That speaks volumes about his lack of empathy, the compartmentalization.
It brings us right to that idea of the mask of sanity.
Yeah, the psychiatrist Hervey Cleckley's term. It fits Bundy perfectly.
This ability to construct a totally believable, normal facade, it kept people from suspecting him for so long.
Cleckley described people who could mimic emotions, be charming even, but underneath lack empathy, remorse, a conscience.
It let them manipulate, exploit, just devastatingly effectively.
And Bundy's traits. They line up pretty clearly with descriptions of antisocial personality disorder. Maybe got narcissistic personality disorder, too.
That lack of empathy is key. Grandiosity, pathological lying, being cunning, manipulative.
And that chilling ability to just wall off parts of his life, keep the darkness completely separate from the public face.
It helps explain, maybe, how someone could commit such brutal acts, seemingly without guilt.
Right. The disregard for others in ASPD, the inflated self-image, and need for admiration in NPD. It's a dangerous mix.
So the early 1970s, the Pacific Northwest, that's where the killing spree seems to really begin.
Young women start disappearing, mostly university students. Washington State first, then Oregon, vanishing without a trace.
It seems to start clustering, right? A pattern emerging.
Definitely. Similar victims, young, attractive, often with long, dark hair parted in the middle. You see a type developing.
Linda Ann Healy, University of Washington, February 74, first known victim.
Then Jorgen Hawkins from the same campus in June. Donna Manson, Evergreen State. Susan Rancourt, Central Washington State.
Imagine the fear on those campuses just spreading like wildfire.
It must have been terrifying. Young women just
Yeah.
gone, no answers, just disappearances.
And his method early on, it was so insidious.
Using deception, preying on kindness.
That infamous routine, right? Faking an injury, the arm sling, the leg cast.
Asking for help, usually near his car, that tan Volkswagen Beetle.
Or sometimes impersonating police, firefighters, authority figures. Using his charm, he looked harmless.
He weaponized basic human decency, that instinct to help someone who seems vulnerable. It was incredibly calculated.
Then comes July 14th, 1974, Lake Sammamish State Park. This was just unbelievably brazen.
Broad daylight, big crowds around.
And two young women disappear, hours apart. Janice Ott and Denise Nosland.
Witnesses saw him. A good-looking young guy, called himself Ted, arm in a sling, asking for help with a sailboat on his VW.
He apparently approached several women before Ott and Nosland agreed to help.
Their remains were found later. Taylor Mountain. It showed a terrifying escalation in his confidence, his boldness.
Even with witnesses describing Ted in his car, even with composite sketches, Bundy himself wasn't really on the radar yet.
Law enforcement faced huge hurdles.
Yeah.
Serial killers moving between areas. That wasn't well understood.
And jurisdictional issues, right? Different police departments not always sharing information effectively.
Exactly. It hampered the investigation, allowed him to slip through the cracks, essentially.
So, autumn 74, he makes a move, heads to Salt Lake City.
University of Utah, law school.
And the disappearances, they don't stop. They just shift location. Now it's Utah, Colorado, Idaho.
It shows how compulsive it was for him, doesn't it? Changing environments didn't stop the underlying drive, and it made tracking him even harder for police back then.
More victims, Melissa Smith, Laura Amy, Debbie Kent.
But then, November 8th, 1974, a really critical moment.
Carol Dean Ranch.
Yes, at a mall near Salt Lake. He approaches her, pretending to be a police officer.
It's just someone tried to break into her car, tries to handcuff her.
But she fought back incredibly bravely, and she escaped.
Her testimony later, it would be absolutely pivotal.
It changed everything. Suddenly, police had a living witness who survived an attack, could describe his methods, and potentially identify him. It wasn't just missing persons anymore.
Fast forward to August 1975, he gets pulled over in Utah. In the VW.
Routine traffic stop, early morning hour.
And inside the car, officers find, well, incriminating stuff. Ski mask, handcuffs, ice pick, rope.
The kind of things that immediately raise red flags. Things that corroborated Carol Duranche's story.
So he's arrested for the Duranche kidnapping attempt. And investigators start really connecting the dots. Back to the Pacific Northwest, to the other disappearances.
That's the first time he was actually caught in connection with any of these crimes. A major breakthrough.
The trial in Utah happens in '76. He's found guilty. Aggravated kidnapping of Carol Duranche.
He gets a sentence of 1 to 15 years.
But the suspicion is much wider by now, right? Colorado investigators are looking at him hard for murders there. Kieran Campbell in Aspen, for instance.
Definitely. The different states were starting to realize they might be looking for the same guy.
So 1977, he's extradited, sent to Colorado to face murder charges.
And that's when things get almost cinematic. The escapes.
Unbelievable. First one, June 77, Pitkin County Courthouse in Aspen.
He was acting as his own co-counsel, right?
Yeah.
Had access to the law library.
Left unsupervised.
Yeah.
He just jumps out a second-story window.
Just like that. Gone.
They caught him again, but it took 6 days. Shows incredible audacity. And maybe some underestimation by the authorities.
You'd think security would tighten after that, wouldn't you?
You would think, but then, December 30th, 1977, second escape, Garfield County Jail, Glenwood Springs, Colorado.
How did he manage it this time?
He apparently sawed a hole in his cell ceiling, climbed through, got into some unused space above, dropped down elsewhere in the jail.
And just walked out.
And walked out. Incredible. Then he heads east, towards Florida.
Twice. Escaping custody twice. It's staggering. And it meant he was free to kill again. A huge system failure.
He gets to Tallahassee, Florida, early January 78, uses an alias, finds a room near Florida State University, FSU.
And it doesn't take long. Just days later, the Chi Omega sorority house attack.
Yeah.
January 15th.
The violence in Florida seems different, even more frenzied maybe, less targeted somehow.
So analysts think so. An escalation, perhaps. Brutal.
Pre-dawn hours. He gets into the Chi Omega house, attacks 4 women while they're sleeping, bludgeoning, strangling, just horrific.
Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman were killed.
Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler were severely beaten, but survived. Miraculously. Their memories were fragmented, understandably.
He also attacked another woman, Cheryl Thomas, in her home nearby, left her critically injured.
The survivors, though, their accounts, however fragmented, were still crucial eyewitnesses to his brutality.
Absolutely. Vital pieces of the puzzle later on.
But he wasn't done. February 9th, 1978, Kimberly Leach
Just 12 years old, his youngest known victim.
lured her from her junior high school in Lake City, Florida. Her body was found weeks later.
The abduction of a child. It just shows the absolute depth of his depravity. No boundaries, no empathy whatsoever. It terrified people.
Florida was in a panic. Massive manhunt underway. Nationwide attention.
And finally, February 15th, 1978, Pensacola, near the Alabama border.
He stopped. Driving a suspicious car turned out to be stolen.
Gives a false name, tries to resist.
But they subdue him, arrest him, and that was it. The end of the road.
Caught, ironically, for a stolen car after evading murder charges across multiple states. Persistence and maybe a bit of luck finally caught up with him.
Then came the trials in Florida. 2 of them.
One for the Chi Omega attacks, the other for Kimberly Leach's murder.
And they were huge media spectacles, broadcast nationally. People were just fascinated in a really morbid way sometimes.
It tapped into that public fascination with true crime, with understanding monsters. But yeah, the risk is always glorifying the killer instead of remembering the victims.
And Bundy seemed to relish the spotlight, didn't he? Representing himself in court.
Yeah, cross-examining witnesses, arguing with the judge, playing to the cameras.
It looked like pure arrogance, total detachment from the reality of what he'd done.
Classic narcissistic behavior, perhaps. Trying to control the narrative, be the center of attention. Even then, more performance than defense.
But in the end, it wasn't about his performance, it was the evidence, especially in the Chi Omega trial.
The bite mark.
Exactly. On Lisa Levy's body, a very distinctive bite mark.
And forensic odontologists, dental experts, they matched it. Directly to Bundy's crooked teeth.
That was powerful, concrete physical evidence linking him directly to that murder scene. A big moment for forensic science, too.
Undeniable. It bypassed all his manipulations and lies.
So guilty verdicts. In both trials, he received 3 separate death sentences.
The mask, that mask of sanity, it really crumbled then. Legally, at least.
But it couldn't bring anyone back, couldn't undo the horror.
No. The verdicts were the legal conclusion, but the pain for the families, that goes on.
He spent almost a decade on death row, Florida State Prison, filing appeals.
Standard process, but agonizing for the victims' loved ones. Constant reminders.
And for years, he mostly maintained his innocence, or, only admitted to what he was convicted of.
But then, as the execution date got closer, his approach changed.
Right. He started confessing to other murders.
Talking to investigators he knew, like Bob Keppel from Washington, and journalists too, Stephen Michaud, Hugh Ainsworth.
Those conversations with a killer.
Yeah. Some saw it as a final manipulation, trying to trade information for time maybe. Stay relevant, exert control.
Possibly. He claimed, 30 homicides? Across 7 states, 74 to 78, hinted there were more.
He did provide details that helped close some cold cases, gave some families answers, which is something. Closure is complicated, but answers matter.
But he was still cagey, right? Manipulative about the full extent, even at the end.
Definitely. The exact number of victims is likely higher than he ever admitted. We'll probably never know the true scope.
January 24th, 1989, execution day. Florida's electric chair.
And crowds gathered outside the prison. A strange mix of protest against the death penalty and celebration almost, relief.
A really complex public reaction, but definitely a sense that a reign of terror was over.
His legacy is, profoundly disturbing. He became the archetype, didn't he?
Yeah, the charming killer. The wolf in sheep's clothing, hiding in plain sight.
He had a huge impact on law enforcement, though. Lessons were learned.
Big time. The need for better cooperation between states, between agencies.
And it pushed the development of things like psychological profiling and databases to track violent offenders.
Like the FBI's VICAP Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, trying to spot patterns across jurisdictions faster.
Hopefully those advancements have helped prevent other cases like his, or catch offenders sooner.
The media frenzy around him also raised questions, valid ones, about how true crime is reported.
Yeah, the ethics of it. Balancing public interest with respecting victims, avoiding sensationalism. It's still a relevant debate today.
But really, when we talk about his legacy, the focus has to be on the victims.
Absolutely. They are the story, not him. Remembering the lives lost.
We should say their names. Linda Ann Healy, Jorgen Hawkins, Donna Manson, Susan Rancourt, Roberta Parks, Brenda Ball, Janice Ott, Denise Naslund.
Nancy Wilcox, Melissa Smith, Laura Amy, Debbie Kent, Karen Campbell, Julie Cunningham, Denise Oliverson,
Lisa Levy, Margaret Bowman, Kimberly Leach.
and so many others likely whose names we don't even know. They were individuals, daughters, sisters, friends, with futures.
Honoring them, remembering them, that's the only meaningful response, isn't it?
It truly is. Their potential, their lives.
Mm.
That's the real tragedy here, not the notoriety of the man who took them.
So Bundy's story, it's a chilling reminder, isn't it, about how easily evil can wear a pleasant face.
It really is. Makes you think about trusting your gut instinct sometimes.
And vigilance.
Mm.
And the incredible strength of the survivors, too. Carol Durant, Kathy Kleiner, Karen Chandler, Cheryl Thomas. Their courage is remarkable.
Absolutely. And it's a testament to the police who never gave up. The role of forensic science.
But above all, like you said, remember the human cost. Keep the victims front and center, not the killer.
And maybe it pushes us to think about how we build safer communities, how we foster trust and support so people feel protected.
So a final thought maybe for you listening. Think about that duality. Charm and connection on one side, unimaginable darkness on the other. Can they exist in one person?
And are there things in society, maybe, that allow that kind of deception to work? What does this case really tell us about how we understand evil?
And how do we get better at protecting ourselves, protecting each other? Lots to think about.